I'm putting together the piece of wood that I'm going to use to make that headstock, which, as I said, will be a scarf joint, but not made from the same wood as the neck itself. Well, same kind of wood mostly. The outer pieces are rimu, I should say, correcting my own pronunciation, and the strip down the middle will be a piece of Tasmanian Blackwood, which will match the top. So I think that'll look quite striking. I'll probably make it a bound headstock because I intend on binding the body as well. So I'll just leave that overnight. Now that the glue job is all dried and cured, not a single gap that I can see, which is great, I put the new headstock piece, composed of 3 bits of wood, through the thicknesser. Now, Blackwood has a tendency to chip pretty badly. Well, the Blackwood that I have anyway, chips quite badly when you put it across or through an electric planer, like a jointer over there, or a thicknesser. Useful though they are, not all woods like them. So after putting that through the thicknesser, and it's usually worse in one direction than in the other. So figure out which direction is going to chip less if you've got a wood that does chip, and do all your thicknessing that way. It still chipped a tiny bit though. So I then took to it with my sander at 120 grit, and then my scraper. Scrapers, of course, are about as smooth as it gets when it comes to hand tools. It now has a mirror finish, such as the smoothness on there. So that's lovely. I've drawn up the headstock, and I guess I just need to cut it out. I said that I would only document the aspects of this Telecaster build which made it different from the last one. It just turns out that there are quite a few such things. So a blunt blade caused me to make some, well, my choice to use a blunt blade resulted in some damage, which has changed the method of construction. It's now not a neck-through construction. Another difference is that just because I had the fretboard sitting around and decided to use it, it's not going to be a 25.5-inch scale like the other one. It's going to be 24 3/4. And you can use whatever scale you like, I guess. And it's a bound fretboard, whereas the other one does not have a bound fretboard. This is going to have a lot of binding, and I want it all to match, so the body, the top will be bound, as you'll see later. And just now, I'm about to bind the headstock. So I've cut a channel into it for the binding. I did that on my table router over yonder. And now I'm going to just bind it in the relatively typical way that I do, with PVC cream-colored binding, acetone to make things stick, and I'll just come back when it's done. It's time to glue the neck in, and it's going to be a very simple job, really, just a matter of gluing it into the pocket and clamping it down. Now, it was a little bit thicker than I needed it initially, and the way to tell that I had the right thickness is that I took the wood that I'm going to use to make the top, some nice Australian Blackwood, and I just made sure that the neck on which the fretboard is sitting is level with that, because it's going to look like the fretboard is effectively sitting on the top. That's the way it's going to look once it's all cut to the right shape. And because this neck was sitting a little bit higher than the piece of wood that's going to make the top, I just took the neck and put it across my jointer a couple of times and planed the thickness back just a little, just a few millimeters. So now it looks perfect. Really simple approach. Put some glue in there, clamp it down. I've got some tape on the piece of wood that this is sitting on, just at the neck joint where the neck enters the body, in case any glue spills out. I don't want a repeat of a previous performance where I glued the guitar to the bench. That was not good. And then I'll just put some bits of wood on and clamp it down. Piece of cake. I'm going to be using Gorilla Glue, premium wood glue, the polyurethane variety. Of course, there are a number of different products made by Gorilla Glue. I've primarily used white glue lately, and I'll probably keep doing so, but this works well, and I've got plenty left in the bottle, so waste not, want not, and all that. So without further ado, I'll get underway. And I'm not too worried about using a little more than I need to. I will always be able to scrape it away, and it's not like there are any channels for the glue to escape into in here. It's better than not having enough in this particular case. I'm making sure that I get glue up on the sides of the pocket, not just on the bottom. I've heard horror stories, well, not horror stories, but very eye-opening stories by guitar makers and repairers who have had some nice guitars made by big names like Gibson. Gibson in particular was the offender in this case, where they've taken a look in here for one reason or another and seen that the neck tenon only has glue on like one side or two sides that's actually making contact, and there's a big gap somewhere, which is, not really the reputation I want. Put my finger in there just to make sure I get glue into the corner. Now I've got glue on my fingers. I'll just wipe it off on this piece of wood here. And although I know that the surfaces are just touching at the end, and I know the surfaces are touching all around, and I know there's a good glue coverage, there isn't a fountain of glue squirting out when I do this, so I haven't used too much, which is good. When I press it down, I can just see a shiny seam of glue appearing on either side of the tenon, which is probably about enough, really. And one more just over here. Oh no, I'll swap my clamps around. That's better. This one has a longer reach. A comedy of errors going on here. Bear with me. I know what I'll do. Got another big clamp down here. I'll use this one. There you go. Okay, and the glue is just popping up now when I squeeze it down really tight, which is probably what you should expect. That's okay. I think that's probably all I'm going to need. I've got one at each end, and I don't envisage needing any more than that. Okay, I will now leave that to dry. It's taking shape and looking pretty darn groovy.